The opinions expressed in the following are those of its participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the producers and the Six Talk Podcast Network. Also, the following contains mature material and mild language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
This is the Anime Roundtable Canada, presented by Anime North. On this Sunday afternoon, September 11th, 2022, you can contact us online on the web, animeroundtable.com, Twitter and Instagram at Anime Roundtable, and you can email us, animeroundtable@gmail.com. Hey, we're gonna meet quota for this month. Actually, I think this is the third year in a row we're taping on September 11th. We've had way too much time for starters in the past. We don't really have it right now as much. And this is one of those beating a dead horse type things. And maybe that's almost disrespectful considering what happened on this day 21 years ago. So, I mean, whenever we did the September 11th episodes in the past 2 years, we've always added our long reflections on September 11th. And I don't think we need to add too much more, except just to acknowledge now it's been 21 years since that
some
day.
Of those people are now adults, as I saw with, you know how they have like the cursed images on Twitter and stuff like that, Mike? So the cursed image was, you have to be this old to buy your cigarettes or something like that. And they have like a date. So I guess it must have been recently they had 2001 September 11th as the date you had to be born after or something like that to buy, I guess, the alcohol or the cigarettes and stuff like that. And you're just like, holy smokes.
I forget, I'm so far away removed from that age. So 21 in Ontario, is that to drink?
No, that not here in the States. That was from the States.
Okay, that's in the States. I think it's 19 for
but yeah, that image was from the States, obviously, but it still makes you remember and say, wow, it's like time just flies right by because they're like in university or they're adults and stuff like that. And we could have said that the last 2 years, but definitely makes you think, right?
Always does whenever this day comes. And it gets more blurry and maybe less emotional if you didn't have an attachment, like a direct attachment to anything that happened that day.
And a lot of them are probably now familiar with what New York skyline looks now, right? So
yeah,
that's
current
the thing
version.
too, yeah.
And I always said that, well, for us, we didn't have a direct involvement. We didn't lose anybody. It doesn't, of course, it doesn't go away for those who were directly affected. And you respect that. Maybe that's as much as I'm willing to say on it right now or today. Well, until next year. But it's always a reflective day whenever the anniversary of September 11th comes by.
And they're definitely doing, as you said, reflections in that in New York, Pennsylvania, and obviously in Washington, D.C., like they always do. And I think even the one at New York City, of course, I'm guessing it's near where the Twin Towers were still, of course. But they've always made it a nonpartisan event. And to keep that going is incredible. And they are very clear to all of them. They say, you can come, but we're here to remember the victims and the lives lost that day and stuff like that, and to read out the names and to give a day of remembrance. And anything else should not be said. You know what I mean? And it's impressive that they've kept it and kept people in line, especially when you think about where the U.S. has been the last decade, right?
Yeah. Okay. But that isn't, of course, the only thing in the news. And that's actually very much a back burner headline this week.
I guess we're going to hear about the Queen for at least the next week and stuff like that.
No,
the
well,
funeral is
we'll
until
talk,
the 19th. So.
Yeah, and we're not going to talk about it at length here. James, let's save that. I do want to save a longer conversation, but we only have so much time today. So, I mean, is there something you want to say just quickly beforehand? I
guess more of the interesting thing was that day we had heard in the morning there were health issues and stuff like that. And it went from that to in the afternoon, she's dead. And so it was kind of like, wow, that just kind of happened because think about it. It's like you probably would have said, oh, health issues and stuff like that. And you think a few days later or something like that, right? Something would happen. But it was just kind of crazy how quickly it culminated and stuff like that.
I guess. But as you might expect, there's a degree of
obviously they have guardedness, and obviously they were rushing to her side, so we knew it was serious when you see all of them rushing to
when the word came
that
that Charles and William and the rest of the
Charles
family.
was already there, and so was Princess Anne, but the rest of them were rushing there, and you can tell that because poor William, he was driving not just Edward and then his wife, which were thankfully, I'm sure they were glad they were in the back seat because guess who was beside William in the passenger seat?
It was
Andrew, and I'm just thinking that's not the person I want driving beside me. It's like
with what's happened to him over recent years, yes. And then of course Harry got there a good hour and a half after. So, and that's another story.
But it's one of those things, I guess, for us as being in the Commonwealth, and this is really the only queen and monarch a lot of us have ever known. So it's interesting to see, obviously, how things go from here and stuff like that. And obviously, we won't get any holidays, but the people in the UK will. So I'm sure they'll be happy for that.
Well, yeah. Well, considering where I work, I get no holiday regardless. As I said, I do want to have a longer conversation about this, maybe towards the funeral date. And because I've always held, and it's not necessarily a supporter, it's just I've always held fascination with royal families, whether it's the British royal family or the Japanese imperial family, as we've talked about here on this podcast in the past, especially when we had our conversation with Fred Schott 3 years ago.
And it's interesting the different directions, obviously, they have went and stuff like that. The British monarchy to modernize the monarchy and stuff like that, and some of it not by their own will. And then you said, we've talked about before, the Japanese imperial family, how they're actually decreasing instead of increasing, and how they're going to have to fight that. But the other thing we talk about is the people behind the crown, because sometimes the institution is its own thing, but then you have the people behind it. And as you said, there's definitely a dialectic, even in the Japanese imperial family, between who holds the crown now, of course, and what, I guess, the more conservative or the people, the handlers, as they say, feel the imperial family should be, as we had talked about before. Said, you know what I mean?
There's a clash, and it's happened. There's probably versions of that clash on both sides of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I said, I do want to have that a longer conversation about that, either with you or with others at some point in the near future. And I get it; it's too far away and off the beaten path for the anime and manga streets. But in some ways, especially when we talk the imperial family in Japan, there's a certain parallel. There's something worth talking about there, especially. Once again, I'd always like to think that if you are an anime and manga fan, you have some interest in the Japanese culture that's also depicted in it. So maybe you would hold some degree of interest in current events as well, and the institutions that exist there, because sometimes that helps inform some of what you see. A good chunk of what you see in the anime and manga we've all become fans of. And remember, as Anime North has evolved over the years, there's been increasing focus on cultural topics as well. And something tells me it wasn't lost on whoever handled the anime programming at FanExpo either, right, Kevin? Just to pull you in the conversation. Just want to get you away from reading Sekirei. I know you're trying to speed rush reading Sekirei.
No, I'm actually right now just trying to brush up quickly on what we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
But I guess, I heard that with some of the stuff beforehand, like FanExpo, that I guess they had someone else there now, and they've kind of revamped a bit of the anime programming or whatever they consider it now and stuff like that.
I forgot. Right now, I can't bring up his name. I've talked with him a couple of times via Twitter chat, and I know others know his name. Just I have to look up my chats in a bit just to remember myself.
I was just thinking more that remember it feels like it's getting further and further away, but remember when it was like CN Anime and then the Comic-Con and all this other stuff before FanExpo, and even the first years of FanExpo, you still had that strong anime component, and then it just kind of dried up. That's why we stopped doing the game shows and stuff like that, and that it was all about getting the big guests and getting these big names and stuff like that, and being the Comic-Con, I guess, of Canada and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting to see them diversify a little bit, and I'm guessing they have enough room in the self-building of the Toronto Convention Center to get some different panels in there and stuff like that.
See, the thing with the whole guest situation is that you'll look at SDCC and they'll still get Japanese guests. Mind you, not that many, maybe one or two.
And it's noteworthy.
But they would be noteworthy. But we don't get any of that nowadays.
Well, it helps to be where San Diego is and have the reputation,
that's right.
ongoing reputation they've had. FanExpo is granted up there, but it's not that nowhere close to the SDCC level right now. But I know that's what they aspire to. I'm not going to say they'll get there, but they are very much. Dare I say second best? Are they? Can we say they're definitely number two, but destined two?
Well, there's New York Comic Con as well. There's New York Comic Con as well.
Okay, but that's more, large. And that's a more recent thing too.
But
and they did.
Honestly, if push comes to shove, and if there was somebody who cared enough to get these kinds of guests, it would have happened.
That's a fair statement.
Why do you
That's
think
a fair statement.
Why do you think TCAF will bring a manga guest every year? Because they care.
I think that's more
and they're a younger, newer show relative to FanExpo, and at a much smaller scale.
And I understand, and
they had some.
It's
connections
probably
too.
The connections,
and yes, connections play into it,
but it's also who runs it. And the mentality of the people who ran it and started it.
And it was about getting creators. That's the other key thing, is getting creators to TCAF. I think that is a big thing that gets those guests and stuff like that, and the will to do it, as Kevin said. Because the last time I think I felt I had a guest, and it's probably the same for Kevin at FanExpo, that were like, okay, we got to go there. We got to get our stuff to get signed and stuff like that, was when they had 3 manga artists, not just one, but 3 manga artists.
Which 3?
It was way in the aughts, but remember it was Chrono Crusade, Trigun, and then,
was it Hitoshi Ariga was there too?
You're referring to Naitao as well.
Yeah, Naitao did Trigun and Gungrave. And then we had Crown Crusade. There was one more, and it's terrible because I should remember who it was.
I think it was the Mega Man, one of the Mega Man manga creators.
But we're talking like mid-aughts. Like I'm thinking mid-aughts.
This was mid-late. 2000s.
And during the mid-aughts, they got guests and stuff like that. Then it felt like it went down as they were trying to chase the bigger guests in the sci-fi realm and other realms. And stuff
basically,
like that,
they cut. You can use the argument they cut off the anime side in their pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
Dead weight?
Who knows?
I mean, that's a strong statement to make.
And then the gaming side went up too, of course, too.
Yeah, so. And now there's issues. Well, okay, not to say I know what's going on, but...
And do they still get horror guests? Because that was a thing too.
Yeah, you brought that up last week,
and
actually.
It feels like it decreased too, along with the anime, I felt like.
Like... They would probably get like a big horror guest, if any, but then
I feel it's kind of merged into the sci-fi part of the convention and stuff like that. And that's why they went for the FanExpo moniker, because they want to be for all fandoms, so to speak, I guess.
Some
like
of us
they
feel
make
left
so
out.
much money out of our fandom, like our kind of people, so to
This
speak.
is now. This is an old argument. This is an argument that's ongoing. That they made so much off of anime fandom's income. But finish your thought. Finish your thought.
But then they don't
Cater to it.
cater to
They
us.
don't fan service it. They don't give any service to it. No
Not
love.
anymore.
Not these days.
And you think that maybe this is the start, because they've seen what's happened over the pandemic and stuff like that, to maybe come back a bit, but not much.
Because clearly,
Yes or no. Train left the station. The anime train left the station on FanExpo and will never return.
The older
It
fans,
could.
I'd say, yeah.
no, it could. It could.
Okay, yes or no. If it does, that loop is a big long loop. Or do you think that route will be shorter?
Well, it's undeniable that now anime is a mainstream interest. Now that it's on multiple streaming devices and not multiple streaming devices, multiple streaming channels.
And
In the theaters.
and
And also at big sporting events like
And-
college sports in the US, when Shonen Jump can like sponsor like one game through One Piece and stuff like that. I forget which US college football game that was, but that was kind of nuts.
and has become a part of larger strategies for major companies, i.e. PlayStation, i.e. Sony.
And we hear about people talking about their fandom that are famous, especially in the NBA and the NFL and stuff like that. And that probably means something in certain markets.
It
Well-
just requires somebody to care again
In the right spot.
in the right spot. Because I don't know. That's how it always begins, right? Someone cares enough to at least try. They'll somehow create their connections slowly but surely, and then you can go grab a Japanese voice actor, or you can grab a manga creator, or you can grab a studio director or an artist.
It's always, and I'm going to go to this line probably more than a few times in this episode. It's the Wu-Tang Clan line. Again. That's always there. And I think that was always part of the story as I knew it at FanExpo over the years. And I think that's probably still a thought as to what could the hang up be for another Japanese guest there. They'd like to focus that on something else that they know could draw way more. As I said, it's value. It's about value for the dollars they spend.
And the other thing
Like,
is,
it has to be undeniable. It has to be undeniable that can be the draw. Anime North can almost guarantee that with whatever they're able to spend. FanExpo, they have infinitely more. They probably have infinitely more to spend, but they want value out of that. If they spend I'm just speaking in theoreticals here now. If they blow the budget on one major Japanese guest who might be the biggest thing in the anime manga fandom industry, but that may still pale in comparison to what they are able to draw out in all the other realms of FanExpo. And they probably wouldn't need to not spend as much, or at the very least, if they end up spending more, they know the return they get will justify it. They have to find a justifiable return. And maybe that's where we'll start to have that debate. what would define a justifiable return for that effort for FanExpo? What would they define it as?
Masashi Kishimoto. Let's do it, FanExpo. Can't be that hard.
The thing is, though, they may want to take that guest and put it to one of the other conventions because remember, FanExpo many, many years ago was bought out and stuff like that. So basically, it's a group of many conventions and stuff
under
like
the
that.
FanExpo label.
So that
the
basically, and they've kept FanExpo there. They added it to Dallas. They have one in Vancouver, and then they have the other conventions. So it's kind of like some of these guests, as we know, are on a circuit, right?
Yeah,
they're
no,
going
and
to
then
all the
talking
different
with them on-
conventions,
and then
you have the special ones. It's like, okay, we're going to spend money on these special guests. Where are we plugging them in?
And
you know what I mean?
Yes, and then talking with Amon, I always see his posts as he flies out to the next one, right? So
and he got to stay on and stuff, and then oversee some other ones. So it's been an interesting development to see how that happened.
Okay,
I mean, how hard is it really? Like, yeah, we're further, but we have Niagara Falls down the street. It's fine.
We have heard they've taken them to Niagara Falls.
Well, that's
like
the common trip. That's the obligatory trip for any guest that comes to any of our loved conventions, AN, FanExpo, IFF. Now you can start adding that to the circuit on our within our fandom.
So it is going to come back next year, huh?
You think?
That's the rumbling I've heard from people who are kind of involved with that. Like, they do want to come back next year. It's just a matter if they can get it to work.
Yeah, and I know we'll have this AN versus IFF debate. We'll have it again for sure.
And that's because they're all about anime and manga. So obviously they were going to come in guns blazing, and it's been years before we saw that. That's why the Fate one, we're like, oh, this is
nice to see.
And not a bad first impression.
And the thing is that with this year, they wanted to make sure they were okay at their home base con in Vancouver before they go back here. But it's undeniable that IFF is for profit, and the owner of that con, like the owner of the company who runs the con, wants those kinds of guests to be there.
And this is where I guess this could be the basis of the next rivalries. I hate to use that word, but
I wouldn't even say it's a rivalry. It's
so. What do you like? There is I guess within fandom, there is a AN versus IFF discourse.
Yes.
And maybe that's just within fandom. Of course, publicly, AN and IFF are probably never going to try to feed into that. At least I'd like to think they wouldn't.
I don't think they would.
They just they'll just do their own things. But... And I think I'm repeating myself on a sentiment I've said or expressed on this show. I've certainly expressed it to you guys privately. The venom that's known to exist for Anime North, and in turn look at IFF as salvation for that. Well, go into Vancouver, and and it seems like, at least talking to enough people there, that venom equally exists for IFF.
Oh yeah, they had some issues.
So they have issues.
They definitely had issues and stuff like that. I guess more people are hoping maybe it'll make AN or some of the people behind it trying to get certain guests and things like that to step up their game and say, okay, what type of guests are we trying to get? Who's sponsoring them and things like that? You know what I mean?
Among other things, yes. I mean, when I say that, there's other issues. But, as I said, I want to have that conversation a little.
But for us, luckily, we go to AN for different reasons and stuff like that.
Well,
so there's
sure.
Definitely, that's the nice thing that we have.
My reason for going is work.
Not for the cultural content and the learning.
When we say cultural, on that note, just as a follow-up to last week's Space Heater chat, I remember this title now. I said there was a series a very fan servicey series that was, at least PG through its regular television run, but they did an OAV and it was all but a hentai.
I think it was Shuffle.
No, it was Green.
Oh yeah, Green did have the thing. You guys remember Media Blasters released Green?
But then they never released the OAV because that's more kiddie.
That is an 18 plus OVA. Yes.
Yes, that was kiddie. And
wait, did they put out the OVA through Kitty? I don't remember.
No, as far as I know, no. And if
you never know, it might still happen, as they said.
Maybe it could happen nowadays. Who knows?
Well,
and
yes.
they were talking about the Kitty label and stuff like that because they were saying, yes, Kitty for physical and all that stuff. Media Blasters kept the rights, so they're still releasing Kitty stuff physically, which is Blu-ray DVD. But when they got rid of the other part of Kitty to Faku, it was actually just the streaming. It's just they haven't done much with that in the last few years and stuff like that. And they said, we hope they do something with that so that it's like rising tide raises all ships sort of thing.
Yeah, not feasible knowing how
the internet works.
How the Japanese don't want any way for their fans to see the stuff uncensored when they can't get it in their homeland.
And they already had that problem with the physical media,
Hence why Bible Black did better than expected, right?
Well, that's why Bible Black is the Naruto of hentai, according to John Cerabella.
He's not wrong. At this point, I generally agree. I mean, there's been historical titles over Fiend, La Blue Girl, back then. It's sort of like saying Fist of the North Star and Berserk, too. So, okay.
But that's why it's interesting that we do have all these hentai coming out on Blu-ray, as they said, and they can actually sell, as he said.
All right, how much do you want to go on to Overwatch League? Because I was there. I did see the first day of the Summer Showdown. As we're taping this, the finals of the Summer Showdown at Mattamy Athletic Center, a.k.a. Maple Leaf Gardens, is going on right now. I have it here on a television to the side. Do I want to at least acknowledge that? Or what do you want me to say about that? Or do you want to at least get to the other stuff we really want to talk about? Because we're 26 minutes in now.
So I'm guessing based on what we watched and how they had a figure saying San Francisco basically owned Toronto like 9-0 in their last few meetings and including this meeting, that basically it's almost like the old Raptors when they were facing the Cleveland Cavaliers in the playoffs and we were LeBronto. So I'm not sure what we would call Toronto now in the Overwatch speak.
Wow, that's a good way to put it. I know we've gone too much, and I know we don't want to go too long today. Do you want to save that for another conversation?
Yeah, if you want to do it. I'm not much on the esports, but I know you enjoy watching.
But the thing is, you're a sports guy, and Kevin isn't. I get it. So he's back to reading. Oh, he's reading the news, so he can.
I heard Kevin sometimes reads sports manga.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
But I know we're both sports fans, and I know that, and maybe I think it's by design, they have to downplay what Mattamy Athletic Center was. Because they can't mention it, I think, legally under its old name.
Yeah,
because
all
MLSE
the
will probably go after them at that point.
And when you went to see the curling there and stuff like that, or when they do things for not Ryerson University, Toronto Metropolitan University, when they do things there and stuff like that, because they share the facility, they always have to go, obviously, by the new name and stuff like that. They do have the commemorations there, but I think that's as far as they can go. Because
and they can do little like documentary and features about the former history of the building, like the former life of the building, but they can't directly, in promotion, refer to it as MLG.
So funny enough, Mike, so when was the last time you, other than the curling one, were there? Because it's kind of interesting, as you said. It was interesting going in there and remembering what it was like going for other things when it was actually a sports arena, as it was. And it's kind of like, it feels definitely more smaller and intimate, doesn't it? And they added other facilities within it, like the Loblaws and Physical gym, yeah.
The gym and the actual basketball court where the varsity team plays for Toronto Metro U. Because they have a 500-seat arena.
It definitely makes you think, oh, this is
team.
a lot bigger, this building, than I thought it was.
It's the way they redid it was actually quite impressive. And for reference, that was my fourth visit inside the arena, because I was there for 2 rounds of curling back in 2019. And then I went there for Ryerson's very first hockey game in that arena. So I got to see, I was one of the first in the public to see a real game at inside the revamped hockey arena. And then I was there on Thursday to see most of the first day of the summer showdown for Overwatch League. And
we actually got a good, you didn't see it there, but across the screen, it kind of was showing how they set it up, how they're in the actual, where I guess the rink would be and stuff like that. And as you said, using the actual seats that attendees would usually use
they showed the hockey. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They showed the hockey arena seats. That was the cheaper seats.
So. Yeah, and they had some, but some, as you said, were cordoned off because they used it for advertising.
Yeah, at least I'd say almost half of the seats had to be were cordoned off for the for advertising, just for the cameras. Because and then it looks like the best view amongst the hockey seats. They're called the bowl seats, but I'll call them the hockey seats for this conversation. The ones that had the best view, I think were said to be sold out for today for the finals, and it looks like they're packed. Mm-hmm. It looked like there were still a good a handful of seats within the floor, because floor seats were available right up until the end today. They made them available, but that was like $70 a pop.
Wow!
I would have gone. I admit I would have gone, but also I do want to meet quota.
Well, given our as they said, our region, the Toronto region, the Greater Toronto region, it's like I'm sure you can find enough people that might be interested to go in through transit or drive in to try and go and see.
And to be fair to the people, and good on them, the people who are there today are the ones who really, really wanted to be there and were looking forward to this. Mm-hmm. And I was there just as a casual fan on Thursday, and I enjoyed it. Good atmosphere, even though it wasn't quite as full as it could be. So I would have loved to soak in what today would have been like. Mm-hmm. But here we are. And for reference, Toronto Defiant finished third in the tournament, or they have finished third in this tournament. They're down to the final 2, and they basically the 2 who are left are the 2 teams everyone thought would be there. So the Defiant at worst met expectations. They probably exceeded them slightly. But it was their best showing in a stage tournament yet. And hopefully that sets them up to at least guarantee them a playoff spot, like a guaranteed playoff spot at the end of the next stage to come. So they don't have to play the play-ins into the playoffs itself, because there'll be a play-in tournament for the final playoff spots later on. That's another story. Let's get to the news, or at least the stuff that caught our attention, anime, manga-wise, over the last week. Or is there something else you want to say about the Space Heater chat, James, or even Kevin?
I guess I didn't hear anything. I told you guys you'd have to give me a summary since I wasn't able to actually listen to it. I was doing other things kind of this weekend.
In many respects, we followed up to a lot of the stuff we talked about last week.
And I was on a different Japanese cultural excursion this weekend anyway, playing through Splatoon 3. I still got a lot of things to do
that's out
on
now.
that. And that game, it's interesting when you see the idols and how they've portrayed them and stuff like that. They're definitely going for the home market. There's a lot of Japanese culture and inspiration in what they created with this version of Splatoon 3. It's like something else. But I've been going through that, doing Turf Wars, doing Ranked, doing Salmon Run with people. Got through a bit of Solo, which is the single player mode, and still more to go through that. But it's been interesting playing that.
I was surprised they put out another Splatoon in this generation. Actually,
I'm not too surprised, because remember that first year, Kevin, it was packed. they wanted to sell that machine. So it's like, okay, Splatoon was the hot thing on Wii U. It got our Japanese fan base invigorated. So let's just get something out there. You could kind of tell that's why a lot of people are like Splatoon 1.5, but it still got the ball rolling. And then, of course, they had the Zelda for launch. They had the Mario game for Christmas and stuff like that. So they were all guns blazing, and away they go. And they keep talking, right, about how this year 5, they're at the midpoint, when a lot of people would be talking about the next system, quote unquote. So obviously, I think if it was 5 years, they figured, okay, we can have another 5 years by doing Splatoon 3. And there were some good quality of life things in there. No more news. Thank God. I can skip that. I don't have to waste my bloody time on it. And because every time the maps rotated, you had to listen and actually sit down and look at the news. You couldn't skip it. So you can finally skip that. And then it's interesting, while you're waiting for matches, you can actually practice or do whatever in this little training ground. And that's for both Salmon Run and for the ranked and the turf war matches.
Kind of interesting.
It feels more modernized for their lobby, but it takes some getting used to and stuff like that, because I'm going through and I'm like, I can either practice or I can press a button and go through things like, what were my last matches like? Who's in our lobby right now and coming in and stuff like that. Like, it feels like Nintendo looked at what the other people were doing and trying to kind of meet what most modern gamers would expect to a degree. They're probably not still going to say there's still some more quality of life things they could do, but they've kind of, I think, stepped up their game to make it more relevant to what those type of games, the online shooters, the online type games, are doing in the modern setting and stuff like that.
That's interesting, considering how much we've talked about Nintendo's quirks over the years.
They still have some problems
and how they kind of go against the grain in many respects too. But that's Nintendo.
Yeah, and they'll still be Nintendo and stuff like that. But I think it was like, it's mid-life cycle, and they said, okay, we'll get another 5 years out of this, and then maybe whatever the next Splatoon game is, they're going to probably do it for the next system, obviously. But I think Mario Kart's another interesting one, because remember they did Deluxe in the first year
and stuff. I knew you'd bring up Mario Kart.
Yeah, so they had that there on year 1. So that was another big one, is Kevin. And instead of doing the new Mario Kart, you saw what they did starting last year at the end there. They've started doing packs of some of their older tracks and of the mobile title, and putting it out and adding it to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So instead of doing a full new game, it's like, here's some DLC. Hope you enjoy it. So we won't see that till next system.
Well, how much are they charging for those DLC?
It's for a full pack, and so I think it's like,
I want to say
$30 Canadian.
How many tracks though?
It's a number of.
It's a lot of tracks, but they don't come out all at once. It's like they come out a few at a time.
So we had 16 have come out so far. I think there's another 16 and then another 8 there. So another 24 to come.
Yeah.
Wait, so you buy it. I'm trying to understand this. So you buy a pack.
You commit to it.
And then they don't give you all of it at once. You just get more over time.
Correct. So it's a scheduled drip feed and stuff like that. And the other thing,
you pay up front for it all at once.
Well, it depends, Kevin. So if you have Nintendo Online, the subscription service, you just get it with the subscription service. If you have the expansion pack, the Nintendo Online expansion pack. So if you have expansion pack for that, you get certain DLCs free of cost. So Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is one of them. Animal Crossing is another. And Splatoon 2 DLC, you just get it and you don't have to pay to own it.
Okay. Long story. And like, me as the casual PlayStation, I'll take the cover off tonight. PlayStation player. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. 38 minutes in. There's been some interesting discussion over the last week, and that's probably putting it lightly. I know Kevin alerted us to it this week. I got the overview. I read the overview this morning, but I know there's a lot more detail to it.
It's been bubbling over the past 2-3 weeks, I would say, give or take. But this would be surrounding Shojo Beat reprints. So, every so often, people will ask Shojo Beat, which is Viz Media's shoujo manga label. Every so often, people will ask, hey, is this going to be reprinted, or will you ever bring this title back, blah, blah, blah. So, a lot of people will ask about more recent titles, like Kami-sama Kiss, or Nana, or which is a little older, or Yona of the Dawn, or Maid-sama. These are Shojo Beat titles. In the last maybe 2-3 years, now that manga has gotten a lot bigger in our culture, in our little fan culture, people have now started to ask for titles from the old shoujo label. So for those who aren't aware, Shojo Beat, the label, was created in the mid-2000s, and this was because Viz wanted to create a magazine publication that's similar to Shonen Jump. Before this, Viz did have a shoujo line, and it had older titles such as Hot Gimmick, Fushigi Yuki, Ceres, Here is Greenwood, Basara, Red River, Please Save My Earth, and other various shoujo titles. Now that a lot of those older shoujo titles are out of print, fans have been asking, hey, will you be bringing these back? Because you're now starting to see people talk about collecting rare shoujo or rare manga in general. So that's how these discussions come up, because YouTubers who create manga content will sometimes post their haul saying, hey, I got this series and whatever.
Basically what we should be doing whenever we go into our vaults, James.
I was going to say, though, Kevin, does any of the pulp line that me and Mike have any value, or is it dead in the water, as they say?
Depends on what you have.
Oh, I sold Dance Till Tomorrow at the Nomi back in 2017. And
I still have that.
I thought it was an okay price, but I know it's probably worth more now.
That goes for maybe like $120 to $150 now for a set.
Okay, I think I sold it for about $100. So in some ways, maybe I shorted myself, but I think it was as good as it was at the time.
I think it was not worth that much at the time.
So I think I did okay with it. For what it was. But I just couldn't keep it anymore.
The pulp line became what is now the signature line. Like it went pulp, editor's choice,
then the signature.
Yeah.
Yes. So I remember that SIG. Okay, sorry. Continue your story.
So, the person who manages the Shojo Beat Twitter account and Tumblr account is Nancy Thistlethwaite. She is a longtime editor at Viz, and she does work on If memory serves me correctly, she doesn't just work on shoujo titles, but that is where she does the bulk of her editing work. Now, I think what happened was that people would keep on asking about the super rare old shoujo titles, which would be, in this case, titles like Basara, Please Save My Earth, Red River, and From Far Away. Those are the ones that command the most money in the secondary market nowadays from the old line. And people will keep on asking, and Nancy had created a post saying, these are we have no plans on bringing these back at this time. And back in 2018, Nancy created an overall post addressing the print issues with it and saying how, look, we really don't want to bring these back, or we can't bring these back, which was the overall message. But depending on how sensitive the person reading that message is, it can come off as a little aggressive. So I'm going to go quickly find this.
And while you're doing that, I guess the real thing as well is we're talking about print manga, and a lot of these older series, even if they have the rights to it, they haven't decided to take them and make them into an ebook format or anything like that, because I think that would be a compromise in some minds, not in all minds.
Well,
Yes, keyword being some.
And keep in mind when we talk about going into the ebook side, remember the ebook side in terms of manga has not hit that Netflix point that I constantly I've referred to over the couple years of the pandemic series. And then of course, and then you can add to that sometimes it's also a specific request of the creator
Now,
to not go that route.
Now, I will say in regards to those titles, most of, if not all of those older shoujo titles, you can buy digitally now. I think they charge $7 US, which is not too bad.
Which is not too bad, but
But
my feelings on ebook pricing.
And people, you have a vocal minority that wants it in physical format.
And that's okay to express as much, but
So I found the 2018 response to the general question. So Nancy wrote, I got an anon ask in my inbox about our discontinued series being picked up again. This is presumably on Tumblr. The simple answer is no. The year we discontinued a few series was when Borders went out of business and the manga market crashed. This was back in 2008, 2009. And in the case of Shojo Beat specifically, it was Body that got canceled. And Kaze Hikaru, because it was a Shogakukan title and not a Shueisha title, it became a yearly release. Because historical series usually don't do very well. When series don't sell, we take the financial hit. Several publishers did not make it through the crash. When people don't buy manga, the publisher takes the financial hit, so it's always really important to purchase manga in a timely fashion. And this is something that fans don't realize.
return on investment. And that's the phrase I've been looking for the last couple weeks. I just made a reference to it in terms of FanExpo, and I think that's what she's referring to here.
And this is fine.
And some of them, they also have those out to certain resellers well in advance and stuff like that. So probably to get some of their numbers, right? How much we want to print.
And this is fine because that's a very stately, matter-of-fact response. And this part is where some people got upset. So Nancy continues to write, now I'm going to sound like a meanie because sometimes I am. Did you not buy a series that we published over 13 years ago, 10 years ago, 8, 7, 6, 5? Now, maybe you were out of the few, or maybe you were one of the few that did. That's amazing. You have great taste in manga, in brackets. I'm not talking to you, though. But for all the other people who didn't buy it back then and think they should have another chance at it now, no way. I don't feel sorry for you. You had your chance. We absorbed the losses because you didn't collect it when we were publishing it. What it also did is make publishing something new in that particular genre or by that mangaka more difficult because the booksellers know that you didn't buy those series. I'm also looking at all the holdouts for when a series ends or those surreptitiously waiting for a box set. And again, only 4 out of 100 plus Shojo Beat series have ever had box sets. You can do that, but those series not being available when you finally get around to collecting them is the risk you take. no one knows you want a particular series until you purchase it. And when series are gone, they're usually gone for good.
End of post.
End of post.
Yeah. That is like, I think we understand it, but as you said, to some, I know how it can come off. And I think some posts you had looked at on Twitter, Kevin, you had shown things where like one was a librarian and stuff like that. And it was younger teens and kids and stuff like that weren't alive at that time. That's and so you can kind of understand how that probably would rub a lot of people the wrong way in that idea. And I understand that. And then the other thing is, I'm always intrigued by box sets. Who's waiting for box sets for a manga? For anime and that, I understand. Well, that's because there's only so many box sets in my mind I can think of between the publishers. And usually it's the popular series.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a growing number of people now will hold out for box set releases. And I don't think a lot of fans realize that publishers will only do these box set releases for already established, very popular titles that they've already made their money on.
Or a prestige release.
It's not a just a AAA title, it's an S.
Yes.
Like, I mean, here I have, and I'm sure you saw it in the corner there a few minutes ago, Kevin. I have 2 boxes of the Demon Slayer series there sitting there. The other might be for sale soon. Message me at Anime Roundtable. Okay.
Because, when it comes to Shojo Beat box sets,
she said that at the time.
Oron is the only thing I can think of on my head.
Oron, Blackbird, because that did very well for them back in the day. And I actually don't remember the other 2 at the moment.
At Anime Roundtable, message us. AnimeRoundtable@gmail.com. And so that librarian response was, this is on August 24th, where the person responded, Shojo Beat, my students weren't alive when some of the series they wanted to read were released. Also, some of us put our manga collections into our classroom collections and they were read to death. This response is elitist and concerning. Yeah, okay. Finish the
Now, Nancy did respond saying in 2000, because they pulled that from 2018, right? So, this person responded now because I think it was in response to an earlier tweet that Nancy made,
and that's the problem, right?
And now
because
we're talking
over time things change, right?
And I believe that tweet had since been deleted, but the Shojo Beat Twitter account responded that in 2018, this was intended to drive home the consequences of expecting series in perpetuity that only a handful of people had been supporting before discontinuation. It was not meant in today's context, but I understand your criticism and I will take it to heart.
That's a fair statement too.
Yeah, no, I'd say that.
I think,
and if it have certain sales, right, for certain lines, and we've seen it again and again, right, Kevin, where it'll just get that one run. And sometimes you don't even get to finish the series, looking at Dark Horse as well.
I'm looking at a bunch of CMX titles in that context as well, too. Because I stopped, like, once I think it was called I Hate You So Much. That was the English title. That got discontinued 1 volume short.
Was it I Hate You More Than Anything?
That was it, yeah. And it got discontinued, I think, 1 volume short of the end.
And that one with DC, we had talked about CMX and like DC Comics, and it was a weird, just to put it in summary, it was a weird line. It was just a weird effing line for a major comic producer in the States and stuff like that, because they just took some wild titles and some older titles and some shoujo titles and stuff like that.
And often messed it up.
And it's just interesting how that came out. Now, you can go and find the story on them. But the interesting thing is Emma. I got Emma and Shirley from them. But somehow, because of luck or whatever, or the quality that people saw in Mori and her artwork and that, it came back for Yen Press. And that doesn't always happen.
Yes. I will say with CMX, it was only the earlier titles and the more mature ones that got the censor stick, like Tenjo Tenge, and I know there were a couple more that I don't recall off the top of my head. But
Manga Up would be proud, by the way.
But
Raijin Comics would be proud too, and they had the actual creator to help with City Hunter being censored.
But after that, they eventually would be better at picking titles that they didn't felt the need to censor, and the Tenjo Tenge censoring did get a lot lighter, but it was still there. And that's why towards the end of their run, the titles were definitely a lot more shoujo centric, and it was basically a lot of the leftover like Hakusensha and like Shueisha titles that like Viz wouldn't pick up, to be honest. But there were still some good gems in there, like Emma, like Apothecaris Argentum, among others.
Yeah.
But so
Let's fast forward.
but going back to Shojo Beat, yes, despite that response, you still had people that were not happy because they're not going to get their
because
Red
it's not
River
a yes.
reprints. Yeah,
Because it's not a yes.
because
I want to follow that up with an insult, and that's more at fandom, and it's at times, what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? Like plastic expectations. But
you know what? I'll say this. Could Nancy have worded it a little better? Yes.
And I'm about to defend her overall.
But I can feel, in that 2018 response, I can feel I don't want to say pain, but like I can feel some of the frustration on her part, because
it's been a decade building of those questions, and the thing of they had hoped Shojo Beat would be more than what it was, because they had the magazine, they had the new line that was launching for Shoujo, and obviously they still have the Twitter in that, but it's a shell of what it was. And they had the anime, remember? They released Shojo Beat anime too.
Yep.
Nana was a part of that.
And here's the thing that a lot of people don't really see. Now, I will say, like, shoujo manga in North America, I do definitely feel doesn't sell as well anymore. I think the demographics have changed in terms of taste, because nowadays you see different kinds of shows that have cross interest between both genders, or all genders, I should say. And so, for example, even a series like Haikyuu, which is in a shonen magazine, it's in Shonen Jump, but it has a big female fan base because there's a lot of attractive boys in it. And there are similar series that cater to female audiences, like Free, like Yuri on Ice, like Pretty Boy Detective Club. A lot of these like ikemen, like bishonen kind of series, where like you often know who the target audience is. Now, think about this. When is the last time we've had a really big shoujo anime come out from Japan?
I'm thinking Real Girl. That's what I'm thinking.
I mean, you'd be able to answer
the
that
last
better
one
than
in
I
my
could.
mind, but they do have a few here and there, but it's not like it used to be, definitely.
Because like I can only think of, if I had to pick like a few, it's like Anonymous Noise, Yona the Dawn. Even My Love Story is kind of not that new at this point.
And that was a
And Banana
Shojo
Fish.
Beat and Sentai, yeah.
Banana Fish. And we all know, well, us three know, the only reason why Viz even reprinted that, of all things, was because of the anime. Because that was also another one that fans had been clamoring for a long time. But
The media mix in action.
But when Noitamina actually created the Banana Fish anime, Viz actually decided to take the risk and reprint it. And that has done well since, and it's still like it's pretty hard to find because it's out of stock.
As I said, it's the various branches of the media mix propping each other up.
Or a creator like Takahashi, all her mangas being started to come back out and stuff like that. And even Yurtse Yatsura, which they dumped like a hot potato, now it's back. But it probably came back because they had the knowledge that probably they were going to do the new anime series, which is coming in the fall.
So you have so many shonen like series targeted to younger boys getting these anime series, and it's undeniable that having a good anime series will boost manga sales in North America exponentially. We don't have like that. Almost never happens for shoujo anime anymore, because back in the late 2000s or even early 2010s, you had Nana had an anime, Lovely Complex had an anime, Orin High School Host Club had an anime, Vampire Knight had an anime.
And even before that, we had Karikano and stuff like that, and things like that. That became
Utena.
a part of the thing we kept on talking about in Utena that we still talked about. And as we said, remember we said like it's kind of one and done with the streaming and stuff like that. I wonder if that plays into it too.
Because nowadays in Japan, most shoujo or josei titles are now being turned into live action TV series or movies rather than
an anime.
as opposed to anime. Yes, that is another thing that doesn't really get talked about.
Because it's easier,
Because-
as we said, to make that live
Well,
action
yeah, because there's no
adaptation, and
sound, there's no special effects. It's really just slice of life a lot of the time. Is it not? Like okay, a lot of the popular there, like you can put up an argument that a larger percentage of that, and you don't have to be too fancy with it.
And not to mention, you will often have both males and females or boys and girls watching shonen anime, but that's not necessarily the case for titles targeted to females. You won't have nearly as many boys going to watch a shoujo anime because it's for girls or whatever the sentiment may be. But it's undeniable that you won't have as many boys watching titles targeted to girls than girls watching things targeted to boys.
And further to your point about going live action, and this just came into my mind. You cast it properly. You cast it popular. You find the right people, and what I mean by right is find the right popular people to be in that cast.
idols or actresses.
Well,
or
not
certain
idols,
things, hosts.
actresses.
You never know.
People from boy bands.
Yep, music. Yeah.
You like boy band artists. You can generate that type of buzz, a different type of buzz that's just even larger than it would have been if it was an anime. That route. So further to Kevin's point, that route is a very keen route to take in the media mix. So that's a fair point to put it all in this context. Can I say I'm going to defend Nancy to some degree, but like that response in 2018 sort of reminded me of, remember the Mako incident in the first era, when I had that when one of the I think I called them from the galleries at the time, my solo shots. I spent 15 minutes going after somebody who claimed to be a translator.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one word, if you're going to try and talk down to your audience the way she did in that 2018 post, the way I look at it, you're not going to have much of an audience left. But to be fair, she's right, times change. And once again, as Wu-Tang Clan taught me, cash rules everything around me. Get the money, dollar bill, y'all. And as I said, this is to be fair. She's coming out from the angle of somebody whose livelihood depended on this. Lashing out at fans who ultimately could care less. I mean, they have their other means. They have their other outlets for entertainment, and maybe she's lucky that it's them. But to say, where were you 13 years ago, is fair in some ways and unfair in others. I mean, I actually respected the lash out to some degree. Because, as I said, this at the time was her livelihood. And maybe at a point it was hanging by a thread because of the downturns that existed at the time.
The downs
And
the ups.
the fact that she's still there today may say something. Because she said you said she's long time. How many can really say that?
They've had a lot of long-time people, though, at Viz and stuff like that, and some have went to other publishers and that. But they've kept a lot of people there in San Francisco, and they're based there. It's actually quite an impressive office, supposedly, but a lot of that was propped up by Shonen Jump, I'm guessing.
Well, and once again, the whole...
Since 2002 or 3, for sure.
And since the whole... Once again, cash rules everything around me. Shonen Jump is the big thing, right? We've just made the joke about Demon Slayer. That's that's one of those exceptions to the whole box concept. Naruto I get Naruto, Jujutsu Kaisen, One Piece. Like those are all these are all series that have like at least mini boxes too.
Well, Jujutsu Kaisen, no.
Okay,
Dragon
Ball I've seen.
Well, maybe it got a. There may have been a Barnes and Noble exclusive box set because sometimes they do that.
But yeah, I mean, I know
as like an overall encompassing general release box set for Jujutsu Kaisen, not yet. I imagine there will be though.
Yeah, there's like other A-list titles, and there's a lot more A-list titles in the Shonen Jump line.
Mm-hmm.
They can afford the box. People can afford to wait because they know that the numbers can justify that.
They can afford the reprints and stuff like that, even for those longer series. When we've heard before, the longer the series is, the more likely you want to stay away from it and stuff like that.
It's interesting because I look at Nana specifically, and that was probably not going to come back if it wasn't for the whole TikTok popularity that it got during the pandemic.
If you want to see, and that got a live action treatment, just as a quick aside.
And they released that under Shojo Beat too.
But the thing is that Nana's time had passed because as much as I would love for Ayazawa to continue Nana, I really doubt that will happen at this point. Even though she is now she is no longer in the hospital. But when you're gone from a series for that long, it really is debatable. Because some people just, like, not speaking for every creator, but sometimes you're away from a series for so long and you don't know, like, it's kind of hard to
get back
well,
in that
Hunter,
creative process.
I mean, once again, Hunter is probably the
or even Beat the Vandal Buster. That finally resumed, I think, a year or two ago after being on hiatus for like 10 to 12 years.
And Hunter was interesting because he's now on Twitter, obviously, and stuff, but he's been actually very forthcoming about, hey, this is what I actually had to deal with. I couldn't get up or sit up or do normal things to actually create this manga. And then people are like, how are you going to now come back and do this?
The common denominator in all this,
I'm going to get more assistance.
And he's finally caving, and apparently he's looking for assistance now, too.
No, he's getting more assistance, and he's realized
not
he
more
needs help.
assistance, he's finally getting assistance. Because in the past, he didn't want to have assistance anymore because of like his creative.
He had maybe one or two, but I guess he stopped.
You mean other than his super rich wife? His equally super rich wife, I should say. But no, because if I'm not mistaken, he did have assistance during Yu Yu Hakusho, and maybe Level E as well. But then I remember there was a specific interview I read where he decided that he just wanted to do it all himself, and then that's why you have hiatuses that happen, because if you're doing all the work, yes, of course that's going to wear you down. And plus, if you get other health conditions like he has with his back, and here we are. But going back to Nana, I feel like if it wasn't for it getting popular on TikTok, then I don't think we would have ever seen it being reprinted.
How about the Blu-ray? Do you think it would have come out regardless?
Could have been possible. Well, that's a little easier to justify in theory, but that's because it's like a different company picking it up.
But I don't think it would have got the sales it probably is now, as you said.
Yeah. And it's frustrating because I'm fortunate in that I have most of these out of print shoujo manga that people are clamoring for because I was around back in the day and I wanted them back in the day. For me, it's from far away that I probably won't ever get at this point. Because that set's like $600 right now on eBay.
I think the question is there someone willing to actually pay those numbers? I think, was it Red River you showed us, Kevin? That was a crazy number for the complete series. And I'm thinking, okay, you have that number somehow from the sky. Are you actually going to get a person to buy that? That's my question all the time. Are you going to actually find someone willing to put down the cash? Because you might not find that person.
One, willing, and two, with the means.
Yes.
I think that's the key part of it.
From my observations, it normally sells at around the 800 to 1,000 mark for a complete set.
Which is below what we were seeing on that one. That was like 1,200 or something.
Like, and even when you...
How many volumes are we talking?
28.
Okay.
28 is for Red River, 27 for Basara, 19 for Please Save My Earth, or was it 21? I kind of forgot. But this is actually even happening for like the older Shojo Beat titles.
So I'm wondering, I have a few, like SG Baby is 7 volumes, so I'm guessing I'm not sure if that's when someone would look at. I know Honey and Clover probably would be in demand, wouldn't it?
It is now. It is now.
We at least have the anime back in print, I can tell you that.
Adam's favorite, we were there. Commands good money nowadays too. See, that had an anime, but then that one never really took off here because I do feel like more often than not, the more dramatic shoujo titles are not as popular as the more like high school, like the more like happy-go-lucky ones, or the ones that just have a general that are generally more upbeat, like a Kami-sama Kiss or a Fruits Basket. Whereas things like not, I guess, is the one exception to that, but stuff like Sand Chronicles or We Were There that are definitely more dramatic in tone don't tend to do as well usually. Speaking of Red River, there was also it's always Red River. I guess that proves how good that series is.
I think you were showing us some videos from YouTube. I guess they're manga collectors and stuff like that. I guess that is added more spice to the discussion, as they say.
Yes. So there was a manga YouTuber who posted a haul. This is honestly, manga haul videos are what get views, as well as here is my collection views or videos. So this creator posted his haul for the month of August, I believe, or July, and he found a complete set of Red River at whatever secondhand retailer. Like, it was either like Second and Charles, or maybe it was the other one that I can't think of right now that's based in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Or Book Off, or maybe it's Book Off. I don't remember. It's one of those, right? He found a complete set for basically retail, or like maybe a little below retail.
Wow.
Which can happen. You get lucky, right?
Sure. And what do the sellers know at the time, right?
Yeah. So
No, of course. Because it's been sitting there on the shelf collecting dust for how long, right?
Or
some of them may try to get that larger amount of money, but other ones, it's like, whatever, just take it. You know what I mean?
No, or also what happens is people just trade stuff in, and it just right place, right time. Now, and apparently, I don't know if it was in this video or in a different video, he also commented on how the shoujo community is now having trouble finding these older titles that are well regarded but massively out of print. Shortly afterwards, he puts his set up for sale on eBay.
How much did he sell it for?
I think he's trying to sell it for, I think, $1,250 US.
That's the one we looked at.
What's the over under? What's the possibility he might get away with that?
I don't think he gets it. I don't think he gets it.
4 figures, yes or no?
Possible. No, possible. It has sold for 4 figures before. It's just that
I want to say close, but depends, because given the blowback he might have received, maybe less likely.
$9.99,
but not likely.
$9.99. Let's talk.
So people find out, people put them on blast and go, "Hey, what the fuck?"
That sounds like a dickish move.
And
that does sound like a dickish move.
Because I think about it like this, and I say this as someone who does flip manga. I don't make a secret of this. It's been brought up in this podcast before.
I sort of downplay it, but okay.
I have sold manga in the past for profit, and I'm saying this now. If you're going to do this as a public figure not a public figure in like that everyone knows you, but like if you have an online presence and
Public
you're
figure,
gonna do
sure.
this,
Public figure.
be smart about this.
And don't
unless you really don't give a fuck that people know about this, and
and that's entirely possible.
And that's entirely possible. He did post a response video to this, and I haven't watched it yet.
So we'll talk about that next week.
But to those who would care if people are mad at you, don't make your eBay account name the same as your public handle on YouTube or Instagram if you don't want that attention drawn to yourself.
That's a fair statement too. Otherwise, you'll end up looking like a dick, a 5.5-foot shaft with 2 balls for feet, right? So, I'm sorry.
It's like
I had to say that.
It's like, come on. Now, I will say, there was another person pointing out, because other manga YouTubers and like people on Twitter that are known in the community, pointed out, and they complained, they roasted this guy. And then people also found out that who is it? There's a manga shop that's starting to build themselves up called Takara Cafe, and the owner put up his Red River setup, and someone was going, well, hey, to like the people who first brought up the whole like selling thing, like they're like, hey, you roasted this guy, why aren't you roasting this guy? Are you not roasting him because like you're an affiliate of him? Some people did respond, and the responses made sense, blah blah blah. I'm not going to go through all that. Basically, it was like, well, I didn't know, but now I've since like mentioned it, and I did express my disappointment. That was what some of those people said. But then the owner responded back by saying, you know what, like, I really love this set. Like, I love this series. So I'm only going to sell it for the price that I'm willing to let it go for. So if someone really wants to pay for that, then so be it. Which makes sense.
At least it sounds less dickish. I'll say that much.
Well, let me find the exact tweet. Okay. Actually, wait.
It just depends if you actually find the actual person that's actually going to read it, because as Kevin said, he's sold it to some people and they expressed their gratitude about being able to finally read something and so on and so forth. But how often does that actually happen, right? It might just be someone
I said that
looks
to
a few years later and says, I'm just going to put it up.
Yeah, I mean, I said that remember, I had that conversation with myself at the Noma Noichi this year. So.
Okay, I found the response. I lied. I didn't find the response yet.
Okay. Well,
I thought I did.
It's, how do you put this?
Actually,
I wish I could say. I'm trying to digest it, to be honest.
I think what you were trying to say, Mike, in a way, is we've talked about the pandemic series and people being at home, and that they've started new interests and things like that. And that some of that is they got a second wind in the manga sphere for actual print manga and stuff like that they weren't expecting. But then they had the delays on the supply side, and they have to fight with everyone else to get what they need to actually create the print editions and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's kind of like, okay, we've made these agreements to license these series and move things forward, but then somehow we have to keep a back catalog, and they've been at it for over 20 years, right? So that's kind of a tough thing to do.
It wasn't what I was about to say, but it's still a good thing that you said.
Okay, now I actually found it.
Oh, go ahead.
So Corey from Takara Cafe said, if anybody wants to drag me, that's fine. I think this whole mess is childish, like the whole like Red River scalping stuff, which I agree with them. If I wanted to sell my set, I would list it at auction and be done with it. I have the set listed incredibly high because I love the series, and if somebody really wanted it that badly, then that's my price.
That's sort of what I said. Like, I mean, that's the end of the tweet.
And that's the end of the basic tweet. And then he did continue by saying, I also agree that the publishers are creating a problem by not reprinting these out of print series. Yeah, a couple thousand people may want a series reprinted, but you gotta know that publishers have minimum printing requirements amongst other things. So it's not just some easy thing.
Which, once again, is 1,000 return.
And they have said that. It's
investment.
like we hear all these voices, but are they even going to get to that minimum requirement? Are they going to be left holding the bag again? And then like, that's going to cause self-fulfilling prophecy.
Continuing, same with my car hobby and anything else I love. Everything has its price, and if somebody wants to pay a stupid high price, then I'd be stupid to not take the money and buy something else that I really love to replace it. Or I could trade it for something else I love at the market price.
Two things. Once again, return on investment. 1,000 is not necessarily return on investment. I think we have to talk a lot more than that for like in the publishing sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So Barack Obama's autobiography, you can think six figures. At least.
And
four figures. Look, I think the history of this podcast barely has four figures in terms of listenership. I consider that great, but it's not enough to make it a life, right? And what's the other point I want to bring up? I remember I made the joke about Saint Tail, or referred to selling off the Saint Tail DVDs at the Nomanoichi.
Mm-hmm.
That I remember the correspondence I had trying to with the person who bought it, ultimately trying to ask for it a little less, right? I just simply replied, I know this is not around anymore. I have to keep it at this price because I know it's worth at least this much, and probably could be worth more in the future if I decide to hold on to it. And the young lady ultimately bought it at the price I did. I put it at. And just like everything else, maybe I lowballed it. I don't know. I do know the Saint Tail anime has not been re-released. So that could be return on investment for her if she looks at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And just to finally wrap this up a little bit, then
we'll do the bullets.
Around this time, Matt, who is the owner publisher of Starfruit Books, he posted a little series of tweets about reprints because he's a small publisher. Fun facts about reprints. 1. Japanese rights holders are most likely to have the say. Number 2, what is the return? Yes, 300 people on Twitter will want it, but will that pay off? That's the thing. That's why
what we talked about.
That's
yes.
why we
Yeah.
say vocal minority. Yes.
That's right. And there's your return on investment point again.
Will JP side even allow reprints in their contract? Point 3. That's the thing too.
So this may not even be a conversation. Shojo Beat may not even have the rights to even think about that.
And on the ebook side too,
yeah,
if
'cause
they're
the
that
thing-
old, they might have to renegotiate to get that done.
And that's what's happened in the past for older series. How then those rights are usually separate. Or when you first license a series, they're probably done together nowadays. But
but back then,
yes.
you probably unless you have a evolution in technology type clause, then it's just print.
And you have creators who are against digital.
We've brought that up.
Like Naoki Urasawa, like we talked about in the past. I know
I think Mori's also the one Bride's Tale and Emma, because I haven't seen any digital on those ones.
Kawamori, interesting.
Yeah, Kawamori.
But yes, and we've brought that up in the past.
And I believe, what was it? I think Togashi too has his apprehensions because his stuff, I believe, like in terms of the Shonen Jump vault, like Yu Hakusho's not included.
Okay.
But
Continue the points, and then we'll
4,
wrap it up.
print runs for most manga publishers aren't small. Maybe for small press, but the big guys print big numbers. 5, printing a series with no major anime currently running or in the works, I would think would be a factor. That was brought up. And then
You have to generate buzz. You have to have something, like as I said,
it has
it's
to
about-
bolster your campaign,
you have to
because
prop
if no
it
one's
up.
going to listen to you, right, you're going to have them just sitting in the warehouse.
and that's why the
It's-
Banana Fish reprint happened.
that you have to prop it up sometimes. That's the way the
6.
media mix works.
Does the publisher still have print rights or is it digital only? 7. Does the publisher
reverse
have
version.
to put any other money up front for reprinting? Yep, lots of things that the common fan wouldn't think about and maybe shouldn't need to think about, to be honest. But yeah, things aren't always that simple.
Yeah, because maybe the financial game changes when they do a reprint. And even if it's not a popular series and stuff like that, the financial agreement may change depending on the contract and stuff like that. The percentage going both ways. So that may add more, not just, okay, we're just going to print it and add that cost. You know what I mean?
There's always a what's in it for me on the other side.
And obviously the printing cost will change because over time, it's probably higher now than what it used to be.
But fans are allowed to be fans. It's just that doesn't mean they're entitled. They can express.
Are we going to talk about other entitled fans in our quick bullets?
in a bit. I do want to let's wrap it. I do want to wrap up this thought. Can we come back to Nancy and Viz and Shojo
Shojo Beat?
Just a final word for them.
Okay.
Like, what do we say to the what? Like, as I said, I overall defend them, and the way that this conversation has gone, because it would be nice to get the train to come back into the station on this, and times do change. Maybe maybe we can get somewhere, now, but. Once again, using all those cliches, once the train leaves the station, it's hard for it to come back. You can't always put the genie back in the bottle.
That's why it's kind of amazing. Like Arya got 3 kicks to the can. Finally, the 3rd try was what completed it.
But yeah, it went from so many things like ADV manga to Tokyo Pop to finally Tokyo Pop again.
Well, for me,
I'm amazed Akita Shoten let them do that again.
For me, it's just, I'll just try and put on the rose-colored glasses for a bit and say, everything is evolving anyway.
I think,
and what we're talking about now, and what may or may not be popular now, it's just not. It's a never-ending game. So who knows?
I think it comes back to one of the license announcements from Anime Expo we saw, Mike, and that's Marmalade Boy being re-released by Seven Seas and Omnibus and stuff like that. I think for those type of series from Viz and stuff like that, you never know. Maybe they still have the rights. Maybe they don't have the rights. So you never know. Maybe someone like Seven Seas or another publisher can pick it up, just like Seven Seas is using their Ghost Ship line to basically pick up all these remnants from Viz that they don't want to publish because they're too risque.
And that's probably another part of the story. It's not as if that's Viz's call. It's not as if that's for Nancy to say.
Well, it is Viz's call in the end.
Well, in some words,
because it's definitely not Nancy's call.
Okay, but because
she's not the one who licenses these titles. It's whoever is higher up the chain who makes those decisions is the one who you would technically hold responsible. But again, this is a business. The series is long.
At most, Viz can say, okay, here's our price for it. You can publish it, but here's our price for it to another publisher.
No,
they use that line.
No, they would have to.
Oh, because we're talking Shojo. Because the Shojo Beat line is their baby.
Like theoretically, if Viz didn't have the print rights for a series anymore, they whatever prospective company that would want to license it would have to go back to Shueisha or Shogakukan or Hakusensha or whatever publisher to negotiate that license. Though in theory, you could argue that the bulk of the work is done. But then again, in manga, I don't know if
a lot of the time they retranslate. So I hate to tell you, they're still probably going to have to go retranslate.
There's a refining.
And that's the bulk of the cost.
And that is still some extra cost to think about. And then even on the Viz side, just because Shueisha and Shugakukan and stuff like that are the parent company, it's not always a given they're going to get a series and stuff like that, because it's the conversation between the suits in the room that we never get to see.
Right? That's like saying Warner Brothers as a distributor for the original Kenshin movie or anything concerning Sony.
Because I know for when Viz released several old Tokyo Pop titles for digital only release, those were the Tokyo Pop files.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, what you were saying, James, sometimes you may have to do the extra work again because you don't know if the English publisher had the rights to the work or not. Well, you don't know if it actually reverted back to Japan.
Yeah.
Like usually it does revert back to Japan, at least when we think about it from the anime licensing perspective, but we don't know.
It all depends on the contract, really. And each contract is its own beast.
Okay. Well, we'll see what ultimately comes out. All right. How much time do we have to do the bullets? And yeah, I know we're using that term again, but
we can probably do a couple and stuff like that. We were talking about
which two
shows that people really, really want and are complaining to everyone and their mother about. So
item. You want me to start this one? So we'll start with what Netflix did.
Yep, and I think it was Disney Plus. I thought had a deal with them on the live action front. Remember, that's why I want a continuation.
Yeah, this is like a follow up to what we talked about. So item, Netflix to add 13 anime titles in Nippon TV deal. And of note in those titles, the 1997 Berserk, Death Note, From Me to You, Nana, Hajime no Ippo, Monster. This has my attention. Yeah. You brought it up. Why this has my attention? Because we talked Nippon TV before, but that's when they licensed live action properties to Disney Plus a few months back.
And some of that was I guess we're doing a bit of co-production and stuff like that. And some of that was Kintaro and stuff like that, and classic stuff that you normally wouldn't think would come over.
And let me just a quick aside because. Okay, let's go through this and then I'll say something on the Disney side. Just go ahead.
Well, let's see. A few of them I think came out September 1st, but that was just the major ones. Like Hunter x Hunter 2011 had 38 episodes come out, or on High School Coast Club, and then Claymore. But the other ones they said following at a different date. We don't know when that's going to be. Some of them have come out before on streaming, like Nana, Hajime no Ippo, Parasite the Maxim. So that's the newer series. And then, of course, we talked Death Note and stuff like that. But yeah, From Me to You is going to be interesting, both seasons, season 1, season 2. But then the big one, as we talked...
Okay. Love that series.
Yeah, the other one that is big, as we talked about, was Berserk 1997 series, and then Monster, because those two people have been bothering Discotheque and other small people saying, we want this, and people are saying, well, it's kind of a tough beast to get some of these things, especially Monster. They said a lot of people said there was a difficulty untangling that to release it physically. And the only physical release that is probably the best in English is from Australia.
The R4 release, yeah.
Which is Siren Visual. And that one, they actually, I don't know how they did it, but they got the original soundtrack music in that. Viz was not able to do that. And all we have from Viz physically is just that first box set. They did dub and release everything digitally, but unfortunately, it's just nothing to do on the physical side. And then on Berserk 1997, no one knows, like that's in the ether at the moment. Media Blasters obviously lost the license, never come out on Blu-ray here. It has a Blu-ray release, came out recently in France, I believe. But all we have is just the DVD remaster from the mid-aughts and stuff like that.
Which is Box of War, I think that was?
Yeah, it's the thin pack. And that one is probably the best we had seen it, because at that time, the other DVDs had issues that other Media Blast properties had, which was they had mono audio on some of the tracks sometimes on certain episodes. But that one they corrected for the Berserk 1997 Box of War, the light pack one, where they remastered. And that, I'm guessing, as Kevin would say, went up in price. I'm guessing even that Monster, that one box set went up in price, the one Viz released. But at least they got all, for Monster, the dub and the sub out onto streaming. But it's good to see Monster out, probably the same dub and sub streaming again. And then it's great to see Berserk 1997 out. It's never been on streaming anywhere in English. So this will be a first for that one.
Legally.
No, legally, yes.
I'm just more impressed with how NTV is just going to a couple different streamers with various types of properties. These are retro properties, though. And, I mean, that, though, I make it sound like it's such a bad thing. These are classics.
And I think it's interesting, too, because, remember, they probably went to Disney Plus as well. But I think for Disney Plus and Netflix, I think it's impressive to get the deal anyway with Netflix, because as we said, it's like the hot new thing everyone talks about. That's probably what they're watching when they're watching on Netflix, when they're watching on Crunchyroll. So hopefully someone finds it in the algorithm and watches these shows, because they're classic and they're great.
I think there's a good likelihood, because who would have thought that Baki would be more popular with non-anime fans than anime fans?
You never know. Okay, I just want to save a word for the Disney Plus side of the equation and the properties they do have. I know that one of the most noteworthy properties, at least to me, was the latest live action version of Kendachi. That was part of the deal. That was one of the titles in that deal with Disney Plus. That has come out already on the streaming service, which, by the way, is doing a Disney Plus Day $1 if you are willing to do a 1 month subscription. It's $2 for a month.
But that's just like fishing at that point, where it's like, oh, just try it, and then you're gonna forget about it, and then we gotcha
for at least another month.
And this is why, whenever I sign up for this kind of stuff nowadays, because I got burned once too, and Crunchyroll, and I forgot,
and you had to pay another month.
Yep.
So now what I do one is immediately cancel and stuff like that. Immediately.
Well, they actually that's
and then you'll have until the rest of the month.
I respect that.
Crave does it too. So
what I do now, as soon as I subscribe,
You put
I
in your
immediately
calendar.
put in my calendar,
Yeah, I know
last
it.
day to cancel.
Yes, I know that. I figured you do that.
Because I only pay for Spotify when they do the 3-month for $10 promos that they do. So you bet your ass I put on my calendar, last day to cancel Spotify Premium on this date, and I
did that with The Athletic.
And I do several 1-day reminders like during the last week to
Yeah.
remind myself to do it.
I do that with I did that with The Athletic because I was able to get 6 months of The Athletic for $1 each month.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that promo.
And then I liked what I read so much. I took out a year for I think $20.
Their stuff is usually pretty decent.
Yeah, it was good writing. And anyway, but the thing was, I didn't do that, so I had to look at at my credit card bills just to make sure.
But some of them, yeah, you want to double check and
Yes.
stuff like that, because a lot of the ones I did, like I said, I was able to go into the credit card thing and say, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore, and I can go back and reactivate if
Yeah.
I want. But what's nice is it tells you, oh, we're sad you're leaving. But it says you can keep using our service till this day. And I'm like, that's fine.
That's cool. Okay, the shout out I want to give, or the thought I want to give, was to the Kendaichi series. Once again, Johnny's Associates. Johnny's Associates guy is in the lead role of Hajime himself. I forgot the name because that's not the name I want to talk about. It's who plays Miyuki, the main female lead. Her name is Moka Kami Shiraishi. That's her name. She's an actress. She's 22 years old. And she's up and coming. I know that she's won an award already for as an up and coming actress. And I presume because of her background, and she might know English because it's her older sister that we might know a little bit more. Mona Kami Shiraishi is the lead voice in Your Name. So this is the younger sister of the star of Your Name we're talking about here. So Mona played Mizuha in that movie. So, and I know she can speak English fluently. She's done an NHK World comedy in English. So yeah, that's who I want to point out, at least in talking about this. I may take out the month just to watch that, and that might be the only thing I'm interested in watching. And I know there's a lot of other stuff that might be worth my while. Just I don't have time, and I'm not totally sure. I'd be lucky enough to be able to get through Kendachi. Anyway, that's what I found so fascinating about this announcement. One more bullet.
Sure. One more.
Okay, you have the other one too. So
actually, it was funny when we were talking about things that they can play off each other, and the funny rumor on the street about Disney Plus is they may likely have the new Bleach anime and stuff like that in the fall and stuff like that. And that's going to be 4 seasons or 4 cores long. So that'll be interesting to see if that comes to pass and stuff like that. I could see it happening that way because Crunchyroll's already filled up with Chainsaw Man and Spy Family. But that would be something to see. Even though I know people were saying like Viz has the license and stuff like that, it's just a matter of Viz does not have a streaming service. So obviously they have to go to someone else. Anyway, but the last thing we were saying is since we were talking about dead media and stuff like that, I had a little one someone sent me this week. This one was from Nintendo Life. They had posted it. It was talking about the UK and about the most profitable format in the UK for physical media between last year and this year, looking at the first 35 weeks in dollar terms or pound sterling's terms. And this was from Chris Dring, and he's from gamesindustry.biz, kind of similar to NPD and stuff like that, who does numbers for video games and other things. But they have a chart, and it's kind of interesting. Number 1 format for physical entertainment in the UK, and I think it would be similar in other Western regions too. What do you guys think the number 1 format, physical format was in the UK for the first 35 weeks in 2021, 2022?
Dollar-wise.
Yeah, dollar-wise.
Well, I already saw the article.
So yeah, what do you think, Kevin?
I'll put a wrong answer just to use the sound effect. I'll say vinyl.
Wasn't it the Switch?
It was the
Oh,
Switch.
come on.
It was the Switch. So yeah, because remember, they're still doing physical stuff and it's weird because even though some of these systems, right, like the Xbox and the PlayStation, stuff like that, they're using Blu-rays and Ultra Blu-rays and stuff like that now, they actually put them into their own category. So Switch was number 1 in 2021, 2022. They had in 2021 for that one, for the Switch cards, it was 101,338. Actually, no, it was even more than that. Yeah, 330. Like it was a big number, pound sterling. And then this year it looks like it's 88,650,000. Like it's a massive number. So even though it went down,
It's tapered, but it's still number 1.
yeah. And then you had said vinyl albums. That is number 2. And I think that's a story in itself. And they have talked about
that's
for a
actually
number of years, right?
Yeah.
How it's made this comeback. And I guess it's people like the sound that it has and that we've seen these record players again. And even
people like to use the word warmth in describing the sound of a record.
And that's why it's funny that it's not on here, but you heard tape cassettes. People are bringing that back. And that had terrible sound quality.
Well,
There's some
and
People
yeah.
want VHS back.
No, we were saying
audio cassettes.
audio cassettes.
Oh, wow.
That's not any
cassettes.
better, but that's not any better because it's a similar principle. So
Yeah.
Wow.
And so number 3 was the PlayStation 4 and 5. So that's Blu-ray and Ultra Blu-ray. And they were basically number 3. They were in the 70 million pounds.
it's just interesting how they divide video game formats. into
Yeah,
its own
like
thing.
Xbox Series
then again-
1 and Series X, it was number 7.
But I guess that's fair because we're talking about physical media for each game systems as being their own format.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fair because we're talking about the Switch. This is in the context of the Switch.
And then CD albums was number 4. But the interesting part is what we're talking, what anime would be on, and that's DVD and Blu-ray. And DVD and Blu-ray basically in 2021, DVD was number 6, and then DVD was number 5, and Blu-ray was number 6. And then the next year, it's the same, but definitely DVD took a hit. It went from 83 million pounds thereabouts to 66 million pounds thereabouts. Blu-ray went from 47 to 52 million pounds from 2021 to 2022. So obviously it changes year to year, but it was interesting. It just gives you the headspace of our market is not as big as you think when certain things like video games and other things are getting like that amount of money. Like it tells you the power of streaming and the power of one and done and the power of actually wanting to own something. Like I think that's definitely gone down in the minds of people and stuff like that.
Well, in certain formats, in certain mediums.
And then even the DVD, like we know it's been going down, but I think even those numbers still surprise me because it feels high in my mind. But then as I told you, Mike, I said some of it may be an older demographic where they've had the thing is like, if it works, don't throw it out, right? So they're still just watching probably something else there, right?
Yeah, the older demographics, well, they're not as in tune to newer technologies. That's just a lot of it. But sometimes it doesn't take too much to satisfy at that stage in that for people at that point in their lives. I think I can say that I speak for myself in that sense as I'm getting there.
But yeah, a lot of this, it was an interesting tweet, an interesting little tidbit they threw out there. Someone sent me, and it was more of Game Biz throwing it out there. And they like to do it when they do the numbers for video games and stuff like that. But it was interesting doing a little comparison. It probably might be similar, say, if MPD did something for the North American market. Obviously, it's only a small chunk of reporting because, as we know, when they do these things, sometimes they don't look at they can't look at the full market, right? Just like BookScan and stuff like that. So you take it with a grain of salt, but at the end of the day, it gives you kind of a small peek and saying, wow, it's like kind of went down and stuff like that, even Blu-ray, because Blu-ray is a mature format and stuff like that. And that we had talked about before, that maybe we're going to have to look at limited run type of releases like Discotek is now starting to do with, say, hey, we only have 1,500 or 2,000 of these. And if you want it, get it now because you won't see it again. And they have the actual number on there, so you remember.
Right. I mean, I look at these and, well, we're talking like physical formats that of quasi audio and video. I mean, we don't talk, there's no print because that's something else altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, I just thought interesting. And maybe this is one of those where the puck is moving when it comes to at least the manga, the anime side in the future.
Yeah. And even on the video game side, people are buying physical video games and stuff like that. But we've seen them ramp up their stores for PlayStation, for Microsoft, for Nintendo and stuff like that. And that they are growing. So it's kind of coming late, but it's going the same way.
Yeah, although the strange part is, and this is coming to what Lawrence said last week when we mentioned him.
Mm-hmm.
GameStop didn't have that much of a presence at FanExpo.
Because they were the major sponsors of the gaming area. So who was the major sponsor then of the gaming area? Because remember, it was like EB Games.
I think
like
they still might have been. It's just, I don't know. I can't, because I wasn't there. See, it's just, I wonder, like it's just an interesting thing to me. But I don't know what else to say about it. Because the Switch is its own thing, clearly, and you two are Switch users. I'm curious, but not curious enough to have a Switch at this point. Although if I can get one for no extra cost and build up my optimum points.
Well, why buy another console that you're barely going to play?
Very, very good. Very well said.
Truly.
No, that's an honest statement.
It's as they say, it's the software or what's on the disc or the cart or whatever that sells those things, right? Sells those formats. And as we know, they came in guns a-blazing, as we talked earlier about Nintendo with their Switch games, and they've kind of rode it along the way. And
okay. Anyway, but that's a thought. Anyway, we've gone way over time. We only intended for this to be an hour, James.
We definitely went more than we thought.
We went almost 2. And in the entire time we've taped, the finals of the Summer Showdown was playing. And even though Toronto got eliminated by San Francisco, they were probably saved a complete murder at the hands of the Dallas Fuel, who swept the San Francisco Shock 4-0 to win the Summer Showdown. It wasn't, well, I don't know how close it was, to be quite honest, because we've only been watching out of the corner of our eye. But it looks like a good time was had at Maple Leaf Gardens, because we can afford to call it that, I think. And I guess
it's supposed to be called Mattamy Athletic
Yes,
Center.
I know. No, but it's like the fans still calling it Sky Dome.
Oh no, I'm that person who will always call things the way it was called when I was aware of its existence. So yes, I would always call it Maple Leaf Gardens, and I will always call it the Molson Amphitheater, even though it's a different sponsor now.
Yeah,
isn't it Budweiser Stage?
Yeah, Budweiser Stage. Yeah, because I think this Bud's for you, because I think they own. Because I think it's
or Skydome. Yeah.
Well, Air Canada Center. Okay. Anyway. Well, that's about it for tonight. But for today. But hey, thanks for coming over. Let's do this again before the end of the month, in some form.
And then we'll see if the others happen to pop on by as we
Well,
say.
Mo's
been watching at TIFF and stuff like that.
If he went,
there's TIFF going on.
That's
right
right. TIFF. Well, here's the bit, and this is to tie everything else we started at the start. I didn't know about Queen Elizabeth's death until you and Amy texted saying it's finally happened. And
that was Mo that said that.
Mo said that, I think, yeah.
And I put a question mark. And then as I sat down in my seat, all these notifications started to pop up on my phone. Queen dead at 94.
Yeah, because Mo would make those Queen dead jokes every so often.
So, and for what it's worth, Mo is still sick. Amy is, I presume she's either, busy with work, because I know it was a busy first week at work for the year, or sick from going to the CNE, because we talked about the food.
Huh.
Well,
I thought it was all healthy, like the sausage on a bun that someone was kind of
you know what?
about.
That picture wasn't. It was a sausage and a bun, but it wasn't a sausage on a bun. It was a sausage sitting beside a bun on a plate. So yeah, that's false advertising right there.
And they didn't deep fry it, and they didn't coat it in like Pebbles cornflakes,
Which
or
makes
whatever
it,
else.
which is both health, which makes it this one both healthier and not as much fun. There's always next year, James. Always next year.
So is there anywhere anyone could contact us, or are we going to leave them in suspense, Mike?
Well, there's always animeroundtable@gmail.com, at animeroundtable, animeroundtable.com. And maybe we'll add something to Twitch and YouTube by the end of the year. Twitch.tv/animeroundtable and our YouTube channel. As for the podcast side, you can always leave us a review if you're able to. And please do. Wherever you listen to us, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or whatever else you get your podcasts on, because reviews and good reviews, once again, could help us in the algorithm.
We would like your 5-star reviews, please, and thank you.
During the pandemic series, we had been trying to do things at least on a bi-weekly basis, and then at a point even a weekly basis. But we'll set our sights a little lower now that things are a little bit more normal. And should I say, we'll try and do something at least twice a month. We've met our quota now on September 11th, but we'll try and do a little bit more. But in any event, please give us a subscribe, a like, or a follow on any of the platforms we're on so you can be notified when we do put something new. Also, once again, if you have a Spotify account and are not waiting for the, 3 months for $1 a month deals, please check out our Anime Roundtable playlist for a list of music based on things we've mentioned on this show. The theme song is entitled Fubuki Snowstorm by Piko Misaki, which is the title track of her current album. You can check out more of her music at picoinfinity.com or her Facebook page, Pico Zen Music. So until next time, thanks for listening. Good afternoon from Toronto, and join us again for another edition of the Anime Roundtable.